Welcome. My name's John Fisher. You can probably read that off the slide. I'm Chief Exec of CHIC, and I'm just going to talk a bit about CHIC at the beginning of this presentation and then hand over to various colleagues over the next hour or so, at the end of which we will take questions. So just some brief introductions. We've got, in the order that people will present to you, Luke Hurd, our Chief Operating Officer, Ian McKinnon from our procurement team, Liam Gratty from the strategic services team, Steve Sharman from the member services team, and Lewis Chant from the partnerships team. They will introduce with bigger job titles when they come to their individual sessions, but we'll go through a series of slides. Can we just go to the program? Hannah, who is hiding behind CHIC webinars, is going to control the slides for us. So you will, I'm afraid, hear next slide, please, as we go through. Colleagues are going to also turn their cameras off and just come back on when it's their turn to present until we get to the Q&A at the end. So agenda, I'm going to take you through a bit of background on CHIC and various things that we do. Then specifically on this framework, Luke will give the intro as to what and why. Ian will go through the procurement process and where we're at now, and then the more techie bit from Liam on spec and pricing, and then how it actually works for colleagues who are on the call rather, will come from Steve and Lewis, and then we'll happily pick up any questions you have at the end. We've had a few pre-posted to us by email, so I'll pick those up anyway at the end. So that's the running order. Take about an hour to get through all the presentations, and then time for questions at the end. So slide, please, Hannah. Important admin bits. First of all, we're recording this. So those who have been unable to make it, or if you want to go back over something, we are happy to share the recording. As the slide on the screen says, the slides will be sent to everybody who's attended here. There's quite a lot of information, and if you want to refer back to something, don't think you've got to sit there and scribble furiously. We will happily share all the slides with you. And if you have questions to pose, I'm not sure how adept you are at using Zoom, but at the bottom of your screen, you will find a chat function, but importantly, a Q&A function. If you could go into the Q&A function, if you have a question, and post it in there, if appropriate, we will either pick it up at the end and answer it then, or answer it during the course of the webinar. So Q&A function is the important one, but you are free to use the chat as well. So that's the admin stuff over. Next slide, please. So who have we got on the call? We've got a mixture of stakeholders. So as well as CHIC team members largely presenting, we have got some of our members from CHIC who will have been using our old LIFTS framework and hopefully will be using this new one, and then framework partners. So that's the organisations who've been through the procurement process and now been selected as framework partners, contractors to provide services under this framework. So hopefully we will get you all into an understanding of how the framework is going to work by the end of the next hour. And in many cases, we will be confirming what a lot of you already know, but hopefully there's some value in that anyway. So thank you very much for joining us, for going through the procurement process to this stage, and welcome as framework partners. Slide, please, Hannah. So just a bit about CHIC. If you've not worked with CHIC before, we are a consortium that provides asset management and procurement services principally to the affordable housing sector. We're a not-for-profit organisation, company limited by guarantee, owned by members, governed by members. So it's a non-exec board of mainly member representatives. But there's a dedicated team, some of whom are on this call, who provide the services under a contract with our consultancy, who are asset management consultants. We provide a range of frameworks and a dynamic purchasing system, which is progressively going to be replaced with something called a dynamic market. But today we're here to talk importantly about this new framework. Final point on this slide is we like to work closely not only with our members, but also with supply chain contractors, consultants, manufacturers, merchants, and so on. We see the relationship with those who provide a service to the sector as important as the relationship we have with the members who use those services. Thank you, Hannah. So to be a member of CHIC, you need to be a public contracting authority. All housing associations and local authorities are one of those. And the way they pay for membership of CHIC is on an as-you-go basis. Colleagues will touch on this later, but essentially the value of every contract that's placed through CHIC has a small transaction fee built into it, which is paid by the member. So the member just pays a price for a service, and then there's a small fee paid on by the contractor or supplier back to CHIC, and that's how CHIC's funding works. And it works on the basis of a collaborative approach. So we try and keep down the costs of procurement and asset management planning and investment planning by working at scale. And that in turn, by procuring frameworks, keeps down procurement costs, both for our members, because the heavy lifting's being done at framework level, but also for the supply chain, because you have much less work to have to do on individual tenders. So that's the basic principle of consortia and what we seek to deliver. The map shows the spread of our members now, which is national across all parts of the UK. Thanks, Hannah. Bit about scale. CHIC started 16 years ago with 7 members and fairly small ambitions, but with one that it would grow and welcome new members. That's grown to over 300, and we're working with 5 times that number of supply chain partners across a whole range of frameworks. Different routes to market. You see the number for yourselves. We've got significant routes to market across everything asset management and asset management related, particularly in the housing sector, because our members collectively own and manage over 3 million homes. So currently 1,200 or so call-off contracts delivering over 300 million of spend. Importantly for us and for some of the contracts that will come out of this framework, many of those contracts are relatively low value, low cost, because smaller organisations who are members might have a limited budget in a particular area, might have a limited number of lifts. Still important they can access this service. So we see a huge range of scale and value across what we do. Thanks, Hannah. So frameworks, colleagues will talk more about this, but our frameworks are driven by what our members want and use. We've had a lift framework since we started CHIC, so periodically they get reviewed. Importantly, they're unranked. So the routes to market, again, we'll come back to, but they can be accessed by all of our members, and we then provide ongoing support through what we call the managed service. So we don't just do the procurement for somebody and then let them get on with it. We're there to help and support and work proactively with supply chain. Thanks, Hannah. Gold standard, this all gets a bit technical, but is a government-driven, Cabinet Office-driven verification standard, which is just trying to push up the standard of behaviour effectively and operational control that consortia apply to public sector procurements, not just in housing, it's across the sector. And there's something called the gold standard, which is a fairly demanding set of standards. We've been through a verification process successfully for that, and our new build framework, which is fairly large and complicated, was awarded that standard in late 2024. And the principles of that we apply to everything that we do. So it just gives stakeholders in CHIC confidence that A, we know what we're doing, and B, we do it properly. Thanks, Hannah. We have a range of services, which if you add them all up, that's the asset management responsibilities and function within housing landlords and other property owners and managers. In this case, building safety and compliance, hugely important to what our members do to keep homes safe for their residents. And our lift and mobility aids framework sits within our building safety and compliance service. Hannah. Briefly, structure of CHIC, board of directors I mentioned already, largely independent, a couple of independents, largely member representatives, and then a dedicated team sitting under that. The orange bit on this diagram is really important. That's where the interaction with members and the commercial and support and partnership services will come during interactions with stakeholders on contracts to be called off from the framework. And again, we'll come back to a bit more on that shortly. But on the left-hand side, marketing, Lewis will cover a bit later. We want to see joint marketing opportunities with you, and social value I'm going to cover in a sec. But again, social value support to stakeholders, particularly supply chain partners, but also to members, is central to what we do. Thanks, Hannah. So talking of which, CHIC's got a very clear social value strategy. Summarised, 10% of what we do needs to be social value outcomes for all the value that goes through CHIC's activities. We do some of that direct. There's a little list there of some of the things that we do and some photographs. On the next slide, you will see the logo CHIP. CHIC stands for Communities and Housing Investment Consortium, and CHIP for Communities and Housing Investment in People. It's our aligned charity, and we transfer a charitable donation to it every year. And that in turn then funds a range of activities that's effectively putting social value gain back into the communities that our members work in. Next slide, please. There is therefore a requirement in all contracts called off from our frameworks for at least 1% of the contract value or annual value of a contract to be returned in terms of social value. And that is a contractual requirement. If you're on the framework, you have signed up to that. You've confirmed how you will do it, that you can do it, and any contract awarded under the framework, there is a requirement that you achieve that as a minimum. On the next slide, it will show us the sort of activities that will count against that. And there's a much wider list than you can see there. It's all in the framework documentation. So a lot of you organisations will do this stuff anyway. And almost sometimes without knowing. What we'll be looking to do is work with you to collect the information. Slide, please, Hannah. Collect the information, which will be outcomes, again, more examples of things that you and your colleagues are doing. And we want to turn those then into a monetary value so we can measure them against that 1%. So our social value team will do that. Slide, please. We will feed that data then into the HACT model, which takes the outcomes, which might be number of apprentices, it might be a number of volunteering hours, money spent on a local community project, and so on. And that model will turn them into monetary outcomes based upon the government's model, which enables us to say how much is actually being achieved at contract level and overall. And next slide will show us last year, so this is 24/5, that through the contracts delivered through CHIC, we know there was £13 million worth of social value delivered. It's actually a lot more than that. We didn't struggle to get data for some of those contracts, which we're still collecting, so it will be greater than that. And we did another £20 million worth of social value outcome through the other activities that CHIC and CHIP drive. So very, very central to what we do. If you didn't understand the word I said in about over the last 4 or 5 slides, please get in touch after this and we'll put you in touch with Emma McCauley, our social value manager. Very happy to support organisations from the get-go on this, and particularly from when a call-off contract is let. Thanks, Hannah. Right, enough of me. That's overview of ARC and of CHIC, and then of our social value requirements. Now, importantly, we focus on the Lift and Mobility Aids framework. So Luke Hurd is going to kick that off. Luke, all yours.
Thank you, John, and good afternoon, everybody who's joined us today. So I'm the Chief Operating Officer for CHIC. Just over the next couple of slides, I just want to kind of talk you through where we've come from with the lift and mobility aids framework, why we've procured the new framework, and what the kind of size of the opportunity sort of moving forward is. So Hannah, if you don't mind. Thank you. So as we've sort of already kind of indicated, this is a new framework, but is replacing an existing framework. So we have had a lifts offering to the social housing sector and the wider public sector since CHIC was conceptualised in sort of 16 years ago. Originally, it was a long-term contract, and then the last iteration of this route to market was through a framework. It was very successful. We launched that framework in March of 2021. We had 14 supply chain partners on that framework who've been working alongside CHIC over the last few years. That just gives a quick breakdown as to the sort of split with those. But very importantly for us at CHIC, we measure and monitor success of our frameworks quite closely and how our marketplace engages with them. And for this particular framework, over the life of the previous iteration, we have seen a 17% increase over those 4 years of sort of engagement through the framework. And more importantly, last financial year, we awarded £22 million worth of contracts and had 35 new inquiries. So new inquiries are from members and suppliers who hadn't previously got a contract in place with us over that sort of 12-month period. So it is certainly a growing framework and quite important to us and our members moving forward. Thank you, Hannah. So as part of our sort of journey to get to where we are today, as an organisation, we took some sounding from our members. We did some member consultation to sort of review what the previous sort of framework had operated and how it worked. And very much the resounding sort of response to us was that members liked having a dedicated framework. They didn't want this service provision to be part of a wider framework, you know, sub-block within a wider framework. They very much wanted to have that route to market dedicated for the specialisms that our supply partners on this framework are able to bring to the table. So we have sort of listened to that and moved forward with it. The other sort of resounding response from our members was they liked the idea of a national framework. As we know, there is a lot of movement at the moment within the sector. So having the ability to call off nationally as well as regionally was important to them as the property sort of demographic within organisations changes over time. The other key sort of feedback, which Liam will discuss in a lot more detail later in this presentation, was around the specification. Our members in particular were quite happy with the way that we had structured our specification and the approach that we took. So during the course of the last few months, as we've been building up to go into market for this, our review process was very much focused on making sure that we were capturing up-to-date legislation. You know, law and legalities have changed since the previous framework. So very much the changes within the spec were focused around making sure it was fit for purpose and fit for purpose moving forward. So the framework that you guys have all sort of tendered into and been successfully awarded onto has two lots: passenger lifts, which covers both service and installation of passenger lifts, and the mobility aids. So the mobility aids covers again service and installation, but is sort of through floor lifts as well as stair lifts, etc., etc. So covers a full range and breadth of what our members would require. Thank you, Hannah. So what have we actually brought to market? Well, the new framework is a 4-year framework. It is a closed 4-year framework. But it has been procured under the Procurement Act 2023. So the new set of legislations that regulates how we procure within the public sector. Key message really for this, and again, happy to sort of talk this through in a bit more detail later, is around sort of KPIs. So aside from the new notices, the new procurement notices that need to be published under the new Procurement Act and the greater transparency that brings to public procurement, one of the key changes is going to be around sort of KPIs and key performance indicators. Now, as it stands at the moment, any contract, and this is contract duration, so the term of the contract above 5 million, requires 3 operational KPIs as a minimum to be embedded into the contract. So Chick has done a fair bit of work around this, and happy to sort of talk that through. But it's very important as our members and supply chain partners kind of understand the requirements around KPIs, and particularly how Chick can help cement those into call-off contracts and support our members with reporting on them moving forward, because there is a requirement to do a public notice against that performance indicators. New framework, there was 15 new suppliers or existing and new suppliers on it. Again, that just gives a breakdown of the number of suppliers. So we've got 6 key suppliers for the passenger lifts and 9 suppliers now who can all deliver the mobility aids. There is, in some instances, crossover between the two. So there are a few of our supply partners that can deliver both of those lots, which is great. Now we come on to value. So we did quite a in-depth analysis around our members, actually 315 plus members now within Chick, 3 million properties, and sort of looking at the size, scope and breadth of kind of archetype of properties our members actually manage. What that gave us through our intelligence was an understanding that across our member base, we have 11,500 passenger lifts and 1.2 million mobility aids that are out there in that sector across those 315 members. So doing some detailed calculations, we were able to put quite a significant value against the opportunity that exists through this framework. Obviously, if we hit that, that will be great, but a lot of that will be down to how we market, manage and support both members and suppliers to deliver these works. The other thing that was quite important through the framework and the review process that we did was around the flexibility on our specification. Again, it will be touched on by my colleagues in later parts of this presentation, but our specs at framework level are deliberately written to be flexible, to give a baseline requirement under the framework, understanding that each of our members and our members' properties may require something very more specific to what they need. So our spec allows that flexibility for members to right size their call-off contracts, so they get best value. So it's all about driving best value through what we deliver and what the call-off contracts under each of our frameworks ultimately gives our members. And again, as John sort of hinted, our frameworks are unranked. What this allows is it allows for direct awards through a business case, so we can work with suppliers and members to ensure they're getting the right solution for what they want delivered and what their residents ultimately want delivered. That can be delivered through a direct award as well as a further competition. So again, my colleagues later will sort of go into a bit more detail about how those processes work. So on that note, I am going to probably hand over to Ian, who's going to talk you through the procurement journey. Ian.
Thanks, Luke. Excellent introduction for me. So my name's Ian McKinnon. I'm Head of Strategic Procurement here at Chick. I'm responsible for the programme of frameworks and dynamic markets and getting them delivered, obviously working with the project team. I report directly to the Director of Procurement here at Chick. So first slide, please. So this is just to demonstrate obviously what you've all been through in terms of this framework. We have a gated process. We're currently at gate 5 as we got into it. So that's really sort of the operational management of the framework. But it does give you some assurance. Obviously, we have a process in place, a proper bona fide process to go through. Congratulations for getting through Gate 4 awards. You can see that there, and getting onto the frame and becoming one of our partners. I wanted to say that first and foremost, but also as we go through Gate 5, obviously there'll be some interesting bits and pieces under the new Procurement Act that we'll be looking at in terms of notices, performance notices, KPIs, payments notices, etc., that we'll be looking at. Also, interestingly, although we have done it there and thereabouts before, more formally, we're going to be doing a lessons learned procedure, which we will enact or trigger about 12 months out of the expiry of this framework, which is in 2028. So obviously we'll do a 360-degree view of the performance or anything that we could perhaps potentially improve. So always interested in the partner's view on that. So that may come to you in a few years' time. Next slide, please. So this really is the e-sourcing structure and process, really. So you'll become familiar with this. It was very familiar to the way that we work in mini comps, obviously, albeit simplified. So you've got the conditions of participation in a framework and a framework agreement and things like that. But going forward, it'll be relatively the same process, except obviously you've done all the hard work in the conditions of participation already. So you'll only really need to do the quality, price, and a self-declaration that the conditions of participation you've not changed anything in that original form that you filled in, which many of you probably spent hours doing, so I appreciate that. But really importantly, I want to focus on the clarifications period here, because periods here. So the first one, obviously, once we received your response documents, just before or prior to receiving the response documents during the tender period, should I say, we received about 33 clarifications, which is a healthy number, on various different subjects, really, and we responded to all of them. Some of them broadcast so that everybody had sort of an equal information to then provide the response documents in section 3. Once we got your response documents, we did the same thing as a panel. Various members of the team split up, and we evaluate your tenders. So we looked at the compliance element. So we clarified on those to make sure that you had every chance of getting through the process. We obviously, where necessarily, we asked about quality, more so emissions than anything else. And then price, there are a number of clarifications. There were 22 in total, and you all responded in a timely manner. And that's what's led us to the success of your onboarding today. So I wanted to say, appreciate that. Like I say, just take note of that, because it'll be very similar to the way that mini comps will happen going forward. Next slide. So we use managed advantageous tender as a methodology, which is under the new Procurement Act, the new terminology, obviously with much more of a focus on social value going forward as times change. So it was a 60-40 quality price split, and the quality, as you can see, was split down further with 10% associated social value, and a further 4 questions making up 50%. So you can see how they worked. So that was the same pretty much for both lots. You had 2 lot-specific questions there, which was slightly different depending on the nature of the service for each lot, but we tried to keep it as familiar as possible to obviously make it as easy for you guys to be able to provide a tender. And that's what we'll do going forward, is hopefully make it as simple as possible whenever we're doing a competitive tendering exercise. Underneath there, we've got the price at 40%, split into various schedules. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail. One of my colleagues will go into that a little bit more, but you can see it covers pretty much the elements that we expect: install and replace, service and maintenance, response to repairs, and some day works, materials and plant. So that's a good offering for our members to come along and say, actually, do I need something specific out of those schedules, and what will the price be, whether it be a direct award or whether it be a mini comp. Next slide, please. So this is the framework timeline. We did have 1 extension in that period of a week. So we pretty much stuck to it. There's not much to say. You guys know this timeline, as many of you tended to it. Obviously, we're here today on the 14th of January doing the framework's launch. This is a similar table that you'll find in ITT docs coming forward. So that's probably relevant as well. So look for that in your procurement information document going forward, and that gives you an idea of the mini comps going forward. Should you express interest? Next slide, please. So a bit of a breakdown, really. So we had 7 tenders for lot 1. which was passenger lifts, and 6 of those, quite a decent success rate, were recommended and therefore awarded. It just goes to show that actually there are some standards around it. All of you sort of earned your place on there, providing necessary quality. We do have thresholds. Not everybody gets through, so congratulations. Lot 2, mobility aids, a little bit more successful on that one. The number of tenders received were 10, and framework recommendations 9 again. Next slide, please. So a bit of a breakdown by region. Again, these are geographical codes that we use in order to ensure that obviously whenever we're doing that down selection process at the beginning, that we are ensuring that the supplier or the partner can provide services to our member when they inquire in those areas. So you can see there's actually a relatively decent spread. Southeast being sort of the most highly subscribed, I would say, but the east of England, London, and southwest being relatively close behind. So obviously East Midlands and West Midlands you expect, being as Chick is based there, but actually we're really beginning to grow and spread out into the rest of the UK now, and Scotland and Wales are one of our growth points, I would say. Next slide, please. This is a sort of more of a sort of a visual image, I suppose, of the previous slide. It gives you an idea of the spread of suppliers. We're obviously as a national frameworks provider, and the heat maps. So those of you in sort of further down East, West Midlands, London, and things like that, you can see there's going to be some healthy competition. Up in Scotland, the Highlands specifically, we're doing quite well in that area, as Scotland can be a difficult nut to crack. Next slide, please. And a breakdown of firms as well, and this is by SME. So this is an SME ratio. So most of you may be aware that most contracting authorities like ourselves are under obligation to ensure that there's a good balance of SMEs onboarded and removing barriers to them. So we've done that quite well, I believe, on this one, with 6 SMEs to 1 large on lot 1, and 8 SMEs to 1 large on lot 2. So it really is giving you guys a chance at every level to ensure that you've got an equal crack at the whip, and that's what we're here for. Next slide. So I'm going to hand over to Liam now, who's our Director of Strategic Services. We'll take it from there.
Good afternoon. I'm Liam Gratty, the Director of Strategic Services for Chick, and I'm going to give you a brief overview of the specifications and pricing, as John kindly referenced earlier, the techie bit of the presentation. It won't be overly techie, it'll just be a bit of an insight into the specification coverage and the way in which the framework was priced. The next slide, please. So in terms of scope, as we've discussed, the scope is passenger lifts and mobility aids. In terms of the detail, that is passenger lifts, including goods lifts, which predominantly the work is the same, and domestic lifting equipment, such as stair lifts, through floor lifts, ceiling track hoists, and powered step lifts, and the like. The specifications will cover numerous asset types. We've already explained we've got a broad membership base with a high volume of residential buildings predominantly. So call-off contracts, contract opportunities will be seen through from high-rise residential buildings through to medium-rise and traditional domestic properties. In terms of lot 2, there's also potential that work will be undertaken in privately owned homes for those individuals that are being supported by third-party support services that support their independent living. Next slide, please. So the scope covers 3 core work streams. The installation and replacement of lifting equipment for both lots, the servicing and maintenance, again covering both lots, and responsive repairs. Again, that covers all of the lift types across the board. In terms of member requirements, the specification covers a baseline framework specification that covers the industry standards, minimum operational delivery and quality requirements. But what you will find as a supplier, that when it comes to call off, that members will have some of their own individual requirements. So that will be a conversation pre-contract to determine if there are any specific needs prior to signing an agreement. Next slide, please. So when we get onto the pricing is split into 5 schedules. Schedule 1 of Lot 1 refers to passenger and goods lifts, and that's for the installation and replacement of the equipment. That was priced on a uplift basis. So where members have got significant cost base, i.e. lift carriages and lift equipment, and the detail of the work may not be fully understood, it was determined that the best way to price that was to have the cost of the materials and equipment, etc., with an uplift on those net costs. Schedule 2 covers servicing and maintenance. That covers all servicing regimes, typical line items for maintenance activities, and also variations of cost in terms of the height of the building. Responsive maintenance is pretty much what you would expect. That covers all responsive maintenance activity, including call out. On Schedule 4, we separated out day works, and day works was really there to ensure that for anything that falls outside of the general SORs and line items that have been priced, that we got some transparency on labour rates. So for example, if there were a specific project or an urgent issue or incident that needed to be attended to by a contractor, those, for example, outside of standard working hours could be applied. Materials and plant, just because of the scale of some of these projects, it was deemed appropriate to allow for contractors and suppliers to apply a percentage uplift on their base cost of materials and plant for anything specialist that's needed for projects. Schedule 5 was a unranked, unevaluated schedule, and that provided for members really to have the opportunity where they've got contracts where they want to deliver volume, so a volume number of units. If it's a large, longer term passenger lift renewal program, it allows suppliers to demonstrate if they can adjust rates to gain efficiencies by volume. Next slide, please. Similarly, with the mobility aids, the personal lifts lot, the schedules reflect Lot 1 ultimately. Clearly, the servicing and maintenance regimes are not quite as thorough and detailed or as involved, but likely the volume will be greater. The only difference in terms of these schedules is the volume adjustment. So volume adjustment on Schedule 5, again, to represent efficiencies by volume, applies a percentage increase based on throughput. So, i.e., if there's a programme of lift maintenance where those pieces of equipment exceed 500 within per annum, that suppliers can apply a percentage discount. Next slide, please. And we're now over to Steve Sharman, my esteemed colleague, the Director of Member Services, who will talk about how to operate the framework and call off from it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Liam. Good afternoon, everyone. Just conscious of time, so I will plough on and just cover the mechanisms for awarding contracts through this framework. So as Liam said, I'm Director of Member Services at CHIC. So I oversee the front-facing team within the business that are looking after our members up and down the country, and we'll come on to who they are shortly. Next slide, please, Hannah. So the first of two mechanisms that we'll look at is mini competition, or further competition, you may know it as. So this is similar to what you've already been through as a supplier to get onto the framework in terms of providing a price submission and a quality submission. So members really can, if they need to, test the market, prove value for money if they feel the need to do that through a mini comp, or they may have a requirement that is over and above or more technical than the framework scope and specifications that we put out for the tender. So they will test that at mini comp stage. It may be that we run an expression of interest first to gauge appetite for the member on this particular requirement, and it may test if the member is looking for specific accreditations or experience with certain types or manufacturers of lifts, etc. So we will then work with the member to understand the technicalities. We'll put a project team in place to work with the member, and colleagues from CHIC will range from procurement, commercial, technical and member services to guide the member essentially through the process to arrive at a suite of documents which we issue out through our portal, which you'll all be aware of. And then we run the process from cradle to grave, really, right through to tender report at the back end once we've moderated all of the evaluations. Time it takes to achieve a contract award, we can achieve it within 6 to 8 weeks for kind of the more basic requirements, and also that's dependent on time of year, capacity, and also how quickly the member actually responds to providing us the information that we need to be able to publish a tender and the clarifications and the evaluation. So there's certain things that it's riding upon, but we can, if everything clicks into place, run that within 6 to 8 weeks quite successfully. Next slide, please. So direct award is a slightly different mechanism where there is no further competition with suites of documentation issued through the portal. This could be where a member has an incumbent who is actually on the new framework and they want to retain their services, the relationship works, and looking at the framework criteria for direct awards, they can complete a business case document to justify the award to said contractor. So that's one scenario. Another scenario could be that the member doesn't have time to run a mini competition. They could be facing that they'll be out of contract within a month, so they need to direct award and get someone into contract pretty quickly. So there we will go out to the supply chain with similar to an expression of interest, really, with the level of detail, who the requirement is for, what they're looking for. We'll gauge capacity, and then we'll use some filters. It could be framework scoring, for example, to filter down and help the member arrive at a decision on who they want to award to. It may be that they have meetings with suppliers to understand a bit more in kind of on a personal level how they would resource the contract and how they operate, etc. All of that has to go into the business case, the information and the process to justify the award. And we have certain thresholds for direct awards depending on the value which determines the kind of the level of information we look for in a business case. And typically it's below and above threshold values. Above threshold, we need a lot more information to justify the award as to below threshold. We can turn those around within 2 weeks from start to finish and get the contract issued for basic, easy, kind of straightforward requirements. Other requirements with direct awards may take longer, and it depends on availability of suppliers to have meetings and the members and the information provided. But we do those quite successfully on a regular basis. Next slide, please. So in terms of the framework, there's no cost for members explicitly to use the framework. There are framework fees associated with that, but members pay the rates set by the supply chain, whether that's framework rates submitted at the time of tender. There may be some supplementary rates to cover stuff that isn't covered in the existing price schedule. It would either be that, or it would be using the competitive pricing supplied through further competition. Either way, those rates will be inclusive of the transaction fee or the framework fee. And it's payable by the supplier on behalf of the member, and it's collected when they invoice for the works. It's all included. So there's no separate fees for members to pay. Next slide, please. So this kind of shows the dynamics of what I talked about earlier, whether it could be a member bringing an opportunity to the framework and a requirement, or it could be from the supply chain, because you've got, ultimately business development resource out there speaking to potential clients. They may say, are you on any frameworks? Because we'd like to direct award to you. The easiest route to direct award is through a CHIC framework, because we don't rank our framework. So it doesn't matter where you placed as a supplier in terms of the scoring. So long as with the member, we can formulate a business case to justify against the criteria in the framework documents the direct award, then that is absolutely fine. So either way, opportunity comes in, CHIC applies the resource that we need to in terms of technical, commercial resource or procurement expertise. Member services will ultimately oversee the award, whether it's a direct award or a mini-comp, and project manage that through to contract award, and then we provide the ongoing high-level contract management support, not to manage the contract on a day-to-day basis, but if there's any bumps in the road that the contract comes up against, we can then jump in and help to mediate and resolve issues successfully with the member and the supply chain. Next slide, please. So I mentioned earlier, I touch on my team specifically. So as I say, we're a front-facing team within the business, engaging with members up and down the country, and you can see there the names and the faces of my team and the regions we work under. And the reason we do that is we want to give our members a main point of contact for them to contact on anything they do through CHIC, whether it's a new requirement, an existing contract, they have any other questions, then they know the go-to person. In the background, after we receive that, we may then look to pull in support from internal functions within the business to help them with the requirement or deal with any issues, etc. So it's slightly different to other framework providers, where they will have a framework manager for every framework they have. So a member could potentially have 6 or 7 different points of contact within that framework provider. We have one to keep it clear and simple for our members. We do that on a regional basis, with the exception of development, which we have one head of development who looks after the whole of the UK. Next slide, please. In terms of the breakdown of our members, we primarily focus on social housing. So as you can see there, 71% of our members are housing associations, 25 local authorities. Majority of those will have housing stock. And then we have the other 4% is made up of education and blue light services and charities, etc. Membership is open to all types of organisation that fall under procurement regulations in terms of public spend. However, we don't directly, proactively market to other sectors, because there's quite a lot we still can offer in terms of housing. However, as a supplier, if you have, for example, a university that is looking for a route to market to award a contract for replacement of their passenger lifts. Membership is open to them, and we will facilitate those kind of awards where supply chain or an organisation in those other sectors approach us. We facilitate it as normal and award those contracts. The only thing we don't do is directly target those markets, because our core is still within housing at the moment. Next slide, please. So we have a raft of other frameworks that we make available to our members for other work streams. As you can see there, there's a number that we have awarded new frameworks over the last kind of 18 months or so. And we have on the right hand side a forward program, if you like, of the next kind of 6 to 12 months of what we need to re-procure. Merchants is out to market at the moment, and then we have a range of compliance activities that we will be wrapping up into one new framework to rationalise our offering. We have consultancy that we're working on at the moment as well, which will go out in the next couple of months. And then we have an aids and adaptations, and that's just kind of those that are right in the forefront of our minds at the moment in terms of re-procurement. Obviously, with every framework having a lifespan, we have an ongoing cycle of re-procurement that we need to keep on top of in terms of frameworks and dynamic markets when they come into play. But frameworks is where the kind of the real bread and butter is for us and the supply chain who are on the framework. And I would say it's, yes, we're the gatekeepers and we procure the frameworks, but we see it as a framework that also belongs to the supply chain to use it as a vehicle for their business development and for ease of contract awards with potential clients. I believe that is me, so I'll hand over to Lewis Chan, our partnerships manager, to take you through how we manage an ongoing framework.
Thank you, Steve. Afternoon, everyone. I'm Lewis Chant, the partnerships manager here at Chick, and my role is to manage the relationships between all of our supply chain partners and make sure that the frameworks that you sit on work as well for you guys as they do for our members. Today I'm going to talk to you briefly about managing the framework and what you can expect over the course of this framework. So next slide, please, Hannah. So firstly, congratulations on being awarded a place on this framework. By doing so, you will have received a lot of market recognition, and you can use it as evidence for future tenders and bids that you may go for across the sector. Obviously, Chick, as John mentioned earlier, has over 300 members, a huge reach, and that really establishes your position in the marketplace. Then we've got our dedicated supply chain team, which is myself, and the rest of the partnerships team. So we've got Mike Harris, who's our head of partnerships. We've got Pauline, who is our partnerships manager for London, and then we've got Ash, our partnerships coordinator, who supports the team as well. Any queries, questions you have, please come to us, and we'll work closely with you to build that relationship through regular meetings. If you follow us on LinkedIn, you'll see we like to get out and about quite a lot. Other networking events and things through the year, which I'll come on to shortly. I know it's been mentioned, I think, already, but unranked procurement. Obviously, one of our USPs is that we don't rank our framework, so it gives everyone equal opportunity that sits on our framework to be awarded work. And as Steve just mentioned, it's important to remember this is your framework as well. It's not just for our members to use. It's there for a vehicle. And so if you've got a procure a new contract or extend an existing contract with you and continue working with you, we can look to facilitate that. Or it might be a new client where your business development team have gone out and done an excellent job of bringing them on board. We also have a dynamic purchasing system, soon to become dynamic marketplace, which has been touched on already. But for this framework, our total facilities management DPS would be the most useful one. There's a separate lot on there for lifts and mobility aids. So if you're not sure if you're on there or not yet, just reach out, let me know, I can double check. But ultimately, by being on this framework, the aim is to build those long-term relationships with our members. And then John mentioned social value earlier as well. So we'll work with you to support that. And we've got a dedicated social value team, Emma, our manager, who can help you deliver those schemes. Next slide, please, Hannah. So as Steve was just talking through direct awards, obviously him and his team will work with the member to build the business case. So there's a number of different criteria we can use to award under. The more of these we can tick off, the stronger the business case will be. So you've got mobilization timescales is a big one for our members when they are kind of short for time. They're going down the direct award process because they don't have time to run the mini competition. So that mobilization timescale is a big one, along with the availability of contractor facilities and local resources kind of ties into that. We can use IT systems, integration with our members' systems, detailed knowledge of installations and equipment. We can use the framework scoring, so that whether that's pricing, quality, and then any other values that your company can offer. So whether that's social value, training, and any local community schemes that you're working on with our members. Next slide, please. In terms of other value, you will have received your onboarding pack, which contained the Chick client mark, our logo, and a press release, which you can use on your socials, your website, to promote that you've been awarded a place on the framework. It will have also contained the member service team map, which Steve touched on, and our list of members was included as well, but you can also download that from our website on the membership page, and that's updated periodically as and when new members join. And it also contained a key contact form. So if you haven't filled that out yet, just fill it out, send it back to us just to make sure we've got the correct contacts, just to streamline the processes further down the line as and when we need to. In terms of other marketing opportunities, obviously I said check out. We do. If you see us on LinkedIn, we'll go out and meet you guys face to face. We can come out to the site, come out to your offices, come out to your factories, pop a little post on LinkedIn. It's a little free bit of marketing for you guys, and obviously tie it in with a meeting and a catch up and things like that. Case studies are a good one. They're very popular with our members, and on our website, it's one of the most clicked on pages every month. And we're constantly looking to grow our portfolio of case studies. So if you do win a contract through the framework and you want to do a case study on it, please let us know and we can support with that. We've also got our monthly newsletter called Chick Chat, which goes out to, I think it's over 10,000 people across the sector now. So it's a great opportunity for you guys to showcase some of the work you're doing. Every month we get one of our supply chain partners to put an article together, steer it towards something a bit more educational. If it's a new technology you bring into the sector, something market leading you're doing, try and steer it away from being a bit more. And then Chick conferences as well, which I'm going to come on to now. So next slide, please, Hannah. So first one in the calendar this year, this is a new conference. It's one we're running in collaboration with the Housing Forum. So down in London at Euston, it's mainly targeting a lot of our London and South-based members who won't necessarily be able to make it up to our main conference, which I'll come on to in a minute. But it's got 2 workshop rooms, 15 exhibition stands. There's still a couple left. So if you haven't signed up to exhibit yet and you want to showcase your products and services to our London members, then this is a great opportunity to do so. And there are limited spaces for delegates as well. So if you do want to come along as a delegate, we do limit that to, I think it's 2 per organisation, just because of the size of the venue for this one. But that's on the 11th of March. So that's the first one. Next slide, please, Hannah. Next, of course, the world famous Chick conference. We've all heard best conference of the year if you haven't been before. This year we're doing it on the 3rd of June, and it's at the Telford International Centre again. We've taken the slightly larger exhibition hall this year, so we've got 70 exhibition stands, and we're aiming to get around 800 to 900 delegates through the door. So again, spaces are open for exhibition spaces and delegate signups as well at the moment. So if you aren't signed up yet, please let us know and we can get you on board. Next slide, please, Hannah. So then this is a national conference, but we take a larger area. So Homes UK, it's at the Excel Centre in London. in November. So what we do, Chick, we have our little pavilion if you've been before. We take a slightly larger area and then get 15 or so of our supply chain partners to exhibit alongside us. And we've got a coffee area, a few tables and chairs for meetings. And it's always a really the exhibition hall because yeah, there's not too many places if you want to go and grab a coffee or sit down and have a chat with someone, other than obviously going into one of the talks, just to catch up with someone. So yeah, that's a great opportunity as well. We haven't quite finalized the pricing for that because we're still working with the organizers to sort that. But if you want to be included in that, please drop us an email and we can pop your details down. And once that's available, we'll send them over. Next slide, please, Hannah. We also have a charity golf day, which is raising money for our CHIP charity, supporting local communities. And last year we did one. This year we have two. So we've got one in the north and one in the south to try and accommodate the demand from the success of our first one. So yeah, details will be shared next month on sponsorship packages and how you can sign up as a team. People from all abilities are welcome, as I think the Chick team demonstrated quite well last year. Next slide, please. And then just a few other opportunities. Pictured there on the right is our pavilion at Homes, as you can see, very busy. But then a few other conferences we exhibit at. So the Housing Conference in Manchester in June, the South East Construction Expo in April, and the Community Housing Summit in Liverpool, which is in September. So if you're attending any of those conferences, pop over to our stand, say hello, we can have a catch up, potentially point you in the directions of our members if they're also at the stand. And then yeah, there's the Futures Foundations Conference in October as well, and the Welsh CHC Conference. And that, I think, is everything. Yes, so I'll hand back over to John to pick up questions.
Lewis, thank you very much. And thank you everybody for listening. An awful lot of information, I'm aware, over the last hour. We're more or less bang on time. So thank you to colleagues for presenting those. As we said at the beginning, the slides will be made available to you. So some of the information in there, if you want to see it, will come around fairly quickly. Hannah, can I suggest you just drop the slides and colleagues put your cameras back on. We've had no questions that I can see appear in the Q&A, but I said at the beginning we'd had a few sent in before. Some of those I think we've adequately answered, I hope, and there's none have been posted in the Q&A. I've just got a few brief ones to come on to. One of them was about thresholds. Steve, you talked very lengthily about thresholds and above and below threshold award, but we didn't actually explain what thresholds are. And because that's a procurement-y question, I'm going to ask Ian just to describe what does a threshold mean and what is it?
Yeah, so within the Procurement Act, obviously there are a number of thresholds that are published normally every year where a covered procurement comes into play. So what that means is a threshold, if your procurement you're going to first to market for, when you're going for so let's say an open procedure for the first time, not necessarily through a framework, then actually a covered procurement will be above that threshold level. So it used to be about 214,000, and I believe the thresholds have been changed recently. I can certainly read them out to you because I've got them in front of me. 207,000 for suppliers of goods and services, and 5,193,000, I believe, for works contracts. So anything that is above that, in effect, is a covered procurement and is subject to the full force of the Procurement Act and regulations.
So for this framework, in reality, the maintenance and servicing and repairs of lifts and lifting equipment will be treated as a service, and if it's a multiple year contract, won't be particularly unlikely for it to be above threshold of 200,000 or 209,000, I think. Depends on the length and the number, but it could be above or below. if it's a lift installation contract, that's a works contract, and the threshold's much higher. So £5 million worth of lift installation is a very big lift installation contract, and that's more likely to be below threshold. But it's an important distinction that Steve articulated, that some contracts will be above, some will be below, and the regulations, which we've referred to, Procurement Act 2023 KPIs that Luke referred to, are stringent above threshold. Below threshold, there is more flexibility. We use the framework for both above and below. So if in doubt, and we're looking at a particular contract, well, you do please ask, because it gets a bit techy, but we do need to understand what they are. Thanks, Ian.
Yeah, it's important to know that all KPIs for all contracts over 5 million is a stipulation as well. So there may be a small gap between the threshold and that stipulation, but 5 million is the rule for KPIs.
The value of the threshold includes VAT. So if it's work for a housing association, you need to factor VAT, and if it's for a local authority, there isn't VAT, they reclaim it. Therefore, those thresholds vary slightly, just to make life a tad more complicated for us all. Okay, another question is, if I've got a contract, and lifts, as we said at the beginning, has been part of the service we've provided through frameworks since the inception of CHIC. So if I've got a contract at the moment under CHIC's old framework, providing lift-related services, can I just extend it under the new framework? Steve, this is a sort of member question. Could you pick it up, please?
Of course you can. The answer is no. You can't extend a contract through the previous framework using the new framework, so you can't have a contract that transcends over two frameworks. What we can do, providing that contractor who is on the previous framework is on the new framework, we can seamlessly do a new award, so a new contract award through the new framework. So service continues as normal. No interruption in service. We'll just facilitate a direct award, which is pretty painless for both parties, and the member and the contractor can crack on as usual. But you cannot extend a previous contract using the new framework.
Okay, so there's the potential to let a new contract, but it is a new contract. That's the distinction.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And next question was on a sort of similar theme, but slightly different. From a contractor who's got a contract coming to an end with a client who isn't currently a CHIC member, so it's not being procured through CHIC. They're not currently a CHIC member. Could they procure that through CHIC, the replacement contract with that member, if they were looking to do a direct award for an appropriate business case? Lewis, this sounds like a partnership question to me. Can I feed it your way?
Yeah, of course. So the answer is yes. Yeah, if you've got a client, happily talk to them, discuss those requirements. It's very simple for them to become a member. We send over a DocuSign form, a couple of terms and conditions for them to read through, but it's, yeah, ever so simple.
Okay, and one of the other sort of related questions we have was if that existing client is not a housing association or not working on housing, is that still as straightforward?
Yes, yeah, as long as they're bound by public procurement regulations, then yeah, we can support them.
Okay, so public contracting authority, a lift in any type of building is fine. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Right, last one, I think, is about pricing. Liam, you kindly explained the pricing structure in both of the frameworks, which obviously was at a point in time. The question is, inflation happens, years go by during the life of a framework. What happens to those price frameworks in relation to call-off contracts in year 2, 3, 4, etc.?
Okay, so as you quite rightly said, the framework pricing is based on a point in time, and whilst we expect that to be the most competitive rate for that initial period, there is a mechanism within our framework agreements to enable suppliers to submit a rate review. We will actively chase that rate review, invite suppliers, encourage suppliers to review those rates and submit their most current rates on an annual basis. We will then, as a commercial function, undertake our own checks and due diligence, set that alongside commercial industry rates and inflationary rates. And once we've undertaken that, we will then confirm acceptance of rates for the coming year, and we do that annually. So members and suppliers can be confident that members have got the most competitive rates in place, and they work commercially for the supply chain as well.
Excellent, thank you. So there is, as well as the managed service that Steve talked about, there's ongoing interaction on a regular basis, a routine basis, to make sure commercial information is up to date and therefore valid should a member contact us in the future year. Okay, thank you very much. That, I think, concludes the questions. We have one on KPIs, which, Luke, I think you picked up in what you said earlier on. So I'm going to, given it is 4 minutes before the close time, always good to finish early. So just some thanks to colleagues who presented to you for preparing and doing that, and to the wider CHIC team for their work on this and supporting our supply chain partners. But above all, thank you to members who joined us for this webinar, and to the suppliers, whether you're existing under the old framework or new under this framework. You're welcome to the family, which is CHIC. We see it very much as a partnership with members and supply chain partners. We do understand how much time and effort you have to put in to preparing for and tendering for a framework, and that we do hope that through partnership we can see work placed through the framework by members, and that you will get work out of it. I think for me, the slides that Ian shared that showed, although there's quite a lot of organisations nationally on the framework, regionally they're relatively small numbers, and work will be determined about who's got the availability or the coverage for a particular contract opportunity. So we embark upon the framework journey. Thank you ever so much for the time you've put in for putting up with us for the last hour and a quarter, and we look forward to working with you and seeing you at some of the events Lewis talked about. So thank you very much.